Maylee there. There's much to talk about. Let's get straight to our panel. Joining us from New York is Wilson Morales. He's a film critic and editor-in-chief of blackfilm.com. With us here in Washington is Yesha Callahan. She's deputy managing editor of theroot.com, an online magazine focusing on African-American popular culture. And Melina Abdullah is professor and chair of Pan-African Studies at California State University in Los Angeles. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. Let's start with you, Professor Melina. Out there, you are in California, in the home of the movie business. Just how big has Black Panther been? And also, is Maylee right? Is this a cultural phenomenon too, or is this just marketing doing its trick?
This is one of the biggest moments, not just for Black film, but for Black America in recent history. So one of the things that's important to note, and some of the kind of leftist critique, is that this is not a movement, but we need to think about the way in which Black art has always inspired movements. And so Black Panther has been something that really challenges us to engage in Black radical imagination. What would the Black world be like if Africa had never been colonized? What would happen? What is the obligation of nations and folks with resources to people who are oppressed? And what happens when Black people come together and exhibit solidarity? And I'll give just a couple of quick examples. One of the things that we're seeing is what I call the Wakanda effect, which is this kind of sense of solidarity among Black people. I'm the mother of 3 children. When I dropped my oldest daughter off at high school, one of the things that we're seeing is her friends are wearing their hair naturally. They're wearing dashikis. They're, very much more engaged in their Blackness. There's also a sense of solidarity that's happening among Black people. Many of us are doing the Wakanda salute, right? We're engaging in different ways, and I think there's a conversation also about Pan-Africanism that's happening. What is the connection among Black people globally?
Fantastic points there. Wilson, obviously it's a personal experience too. Do you agree with the professor? What else does this movie mean?
I think it's meant a lot for different people.
Yeah.
I have friends who never go to the movies, because either they're working late or they don't have time. And I'm finding them not only going to the movies for the first time in years, but going twice to see this movie along with their kids. This movie has been long in the making. We've been waiting for this like a boxing fight, like when 2 top people are going to fight and you have to wait months before it happens. This is what Black Panther is. People have been waiting for a long time. And myself going into it, I just wanted it to be good. And it was better than good. And the effect that it's had still going on its 3rd week, you're seeing the numbers tell that people are still going to see this movie in numbers, in record numbers. No matter what the experts are saying in terms of what the box office is going to do, it's still exceeding those numbers. It's showing that this is an effect that's not a 2-week thing. It's a phenomenon. It's going to keep going.
Well, let's hope it's big in China and as well. Yesha, there have been other mainstream African-American films, majority African-American cast. What makes this different?
I think what makes this one different is that we're coming off of an Obama presidency. And
all those days, I remember those days.
Yeah, the good old days. And now, we have, Trump in office. And so you see Blackness being highlighted. Everyone is rejoicing because...
And the Black Lives Matter movement.
Exactly. And so everyone's rejoicing because it's, it's like a silver lining in this dark cloud that we're dealing with right now. So I think it speaks to that. And also, it speaks to, young kids are looking at these people in these movies, like my son, for example. We've seen every Marvel movie.
How old is he?
He's 18.
Okay.
And we've seen every Marvel movie so far since he was about 5.
Right.
And so he's been, he's read Black Panther comics since he was a kid, but it's taken this long for it to become a movie. And he hasn't seen it yet because he wants to see it with me. So, he's an 18-year-old who still wants to go see this movie with his mother. So I think it's like connecting people. It's connecting generations. You have young people. You have old people seeing this movie. So I think it speaks to a broader effect of, sure, there's been Black movies done with Black directors, Black casts, but they didn't cross those generational lines.
interesting.
And can I just
Of
add
course.
one thing to that point? I think that's a tremendous point. And what happens when we go to these films, right, is when we've gone to see films in the past, we're carving out time and it's a film-going experience. This is more than a film-going experience. The people in the theater become connected. It becomes this thing, right? We all know there was this meme going around on social media, an old picture of Eddie Murphy in Coming to America, all dressed up, and it says, you know, that he's at the theater and he goes, you know why I'm here, right? And that's how we felt, right? So we're dressed up. I didn't see anybody. I went to probably the blackest theater in the country, Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Theater, to see the film, but we were all dressed up. We all had on dashikis. Some people had their faces painted.
Yeah.
And you know, at the end of the film, there were about 100 of us who were Black Lives Matter activists who saw the film opening weekend all together. At the end of the film, we got up in the theater and we chanted our closing chant. It is our duty to fight for freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love and protect one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains. So it's more than the film.
Yeah.
It's the way in which the audience is engaged through the film and is engaged with each other, and it spills over beyond that 2-hour experience into the lives that we live.
I'm glad you brought up Coming to America. Wilson, I want to put this to you. Coming to America had the fictional country Zamunda. What is the difference between Wakanda and Zamunda? Because there has been a lot of examination since Black Panther of the African-American experience and the diaspora experience of Black people and the relationship to Africa as the continent as well. And this is fascinating to see the debate and the discussion play out.
So I
think
don't
what you're
know.
getting out of
Let's give it to Wilson. Yeah.
I think, you know, what you're getting out of both films is that, you know, Coming to America, obviously in the 80s, we'll see more of a comedy, where Black Panther, you know, Ryan Coogler rewrote this script. You know, he didn't inject what we know from the comic books, but he wanted to make it more real so that an audience seeing this, specifically a Black audience, can resonate with what's happening, you know, getting culturally what Africa's about, injecting dialogue that they can take home with them, you know. I think a lot of us that saw that movie, you know, you see it on Twitter and social media, you're seeing some of these dialogues and some of the actions being repeated online because this is something they can reconnect with. You know, and you go back to the Eddie Murphy film, you know, we know the costumes and the wardrobe that they wore, but there's not so much of a dialogue you can remember from that one as opposed to Black Panther. You're getting out of it.
I also just want to bring up this point, Yesha. It's not just about blackness, is it? It's also about powerful female leads.
I mean,
I mean, you know, you got a one character, Shuri, who played by Letitia Wright, scientific genius. You've got lots of strong, independent women here who are Black too.
And, you know, and they kind of overshadowed Black Panther. Well, to me, they did, you know, because of their, for Shuri, the science background. You know, without Shuri, he wouldn't have his technology, you know. And then, you know, the warriors, you know, they were protecting what they felt was their rights. You know, they were protecting their land, protecting their country. And so Lupita Nyong'o's character, Danai Gurira's character, those women were like, you know, strong women. They weren't angry women. They were strong and proud. So you can't say, oh, well, they had these angry Black women characters. Well, no, they weren't angry. They were just proud and strong.
And, sorry, Professor Abdullah, go on.
Yeah, and I just want to put on my professor hat quickly that I think Ryan Coogler did an amazing job. This is clearly a very well-researched film because the Dora Milaje, the elite group of women warriors, are clearly based on the Dahomey warrior women. There's so much accuracy in the way in which women are depicted. And I just want to lift up Aisha's point about, you know, the role of women. I would say they're not overshadowing the men, but they're actually in partnership with men, right? And so when we think about pre-colonial African gender roles, right? Pre-colonial African gender roles understood that Black men and Black women are reliant on one another. And it's exhibited beautifully in this film that the Black men and Black women must not be in competition with one another, but stand together in order to ensure that we're victorious and that our freedom is won.
Wilson, do you think the authenticity of this film. And you're absolutely right, Professor, to talk about that. They spent so much money on the details, especially on the cultural aspects of it. Many of my friends in Africa have commented on it, especially in South Africa and Namibia. Do you think that, in a way, can help create a conversation amongst African-American youth here that they wouldn't necessarily be having?
I think it already
Yes,
has.
you know,
I think we're having those conversations, absolutely.
And Wilson?
You know, Black Panther is not the first movie. You know, we've had these conversations when Hidden Figures was nominated and it did well overseas. We've had these conversations with Straight Outta Compton. Black Panther is different. You know, obviously because of the bigger number that it's had, it's brought out more individuals to the theaters. You know, the fact that, you know, parents can come out, you know, and bring their kids to the movies and see it 2 or 3 times. And just the other day, Chadwick Boseman and Lupita were at the Apollo in New York City, and it was jam-packed. Yeah. And they were having a conversation, not just about comic books, but about themes and culturalness. And, you know, to see that audience quiet, you can hear a pin drop as you're hearing, they're learning, you know, and they're walking out of there inspired.